Welcome, everyone, to the Illuminated Mind podcast with me, Matthew Brownstein. I'm here with a lovely guest, Beth Honeycutt. Beth, so welcome, first of all.
Thank you. It's great to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to train you personally in Texas, the one time that we actually did trainings in Texas. So it was wonderful. I don't teach in that way anymore, especially traveling the country to do that. But it was a great opportunity to meet you and your friends and to get to know you well. So yeah, you decided to come on as a podcast guest. Why don't you just tell us about you, your background? I know we're going to talk about shamanism in relationship to hypnotherapy, which I'm excited to dive into. So yeah, just tell us about you.
Well, in terms of my background, I don't know how far back you want me to go, but I will start from a time in 2000, the early 2000s, when I was in an automobile accident that really caused me to take a look at what am I doing with my life? And I began waking up daily with questioning, what is my purpose? What am I doing? I have been a practicing paralegal for over 30 years. And I, in 2006, was led to begin some shamanic practices and studies, and have stayed in those study guides with different teachers since that time. And one of the fellow students at one of my classes actually mentioned you specifically. And we were very, very fortunate, I was at least, to be able to learn directly under you when you came to Texas. So it seems that having been out in the corporate world and then beginning to exercise my own spiritual path, which of course I had been on as a seeker my entire life, but then to move on now into adding something very specific like hypnotherapy to an understanding of shamanism has really deepened what I feel like I have to offer to my clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful. So background in paralegal, so you understood more the corporate type environment. A lot of people who go through our training had that, and realizing they want something more, they want something deeper. You had an experience that helped to kind of catapult you into a deeper sense of spirituality and purpose. Yeah, so before we go into more about you, I wonder if you can talk about what was it like going through the training?
Training was fabulous. So I would do a lot of the hours, of course, here on the computer, and that's how we begin our training. And you have that 20 hours or so that we begin up front. It seemed very seamless and very opening, and it reminded me actually of things I'd experienced in my childhood. So for me, it was another point for me in remembering who it is I am called to be. And then going through the 100 hours at a time, and then having you come and we do intensive weekends locally was fabulous, because then it began to really cause me to implement what we were learning during the months of study. So, and then the opportunity to practice with others in my class, and then to sit and have that final exam was really, really wonderful.
Thank you. I know I enjoyed training your group for sure. So talk to me about shamanism. How has that synthesized, if that's the right word? How's that kind of blended into your own hypnotherapy practice? Or how has hypnotherapy blended into your shamanic practices?
Yeah. Well, I'd really started the shamanic practices first. And when I graduated from the Four Winds Society in about 2011 with the last of the master classes there, I continued studying and have continued studying with the Rainbow Jaguar Institute. To be able to talk to people about shamanism is, in particularly in the Bible Belt in Texas, people think I'm a little weird, or a little bit of that woo-woo is in me. When I talk to people, however, about hypnotherapy, they automatically go, oh, I think I know what that is. And so it's really been an easy transition for me to advertise more as a hypnotherapist, and to be able to put out more techniques and more ways to help people, whether it's through the weight loss training we have, or finding purpose, or sleeping better, whatever those things are. To be able to then talk with them about hypnotherapy and then move into this other experience of shamanism has been a very easy fit and very smooth to get people to transition from one to the other and even back again to be able to come back and do regressions, to be able to have an openness that I really find refreshing for what we're doing.
Nice, beautiful. So it sounds like they blend, and also the hypnotherapy gives you more credibility in a sense, or at least it's not sound as woo-woo in the Bible Belt. People are more open to hypnotherapy than shamanism. I wonder, can you just define for you, what is shamanism? And for somebody who just doesn't know, or maybe they have a totally different idea than what you think it is.
Well, that's a really great question. I haven't looked up the specific definition in a long time. But historically, shamanism goes all the way back to Tibet. And there was an understanding that that was where this originated. It came all the way across the Bering Straits and all the way down into South America, kind of morphing into each place and each land where the people settled, and it stayed with the people. It is, I believe, if I say, it's a way of understanding the world around us, a way of adding on new perceptions and new perspectives to just what my physical senses can see. Actually, you teach a lot on A Course in Miracles, and I find actually that it fits in very easily with the Course in Miracles as well, because it's encouraging us to see better, to hear better, to understand with new perspectives. And it gives me something more than what only my religious background had given. I am United Methodist by my Protestant religious training. And yet shamanism allows me to kind of open a new door that says, I don't have to have answers to everything. And it's really okay to continue to live within the question of what life is all about. So it's a very open-ended.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yet I hear that there's no conflict, at least for you, between United Methodist or Protestant teachings, as well as hypnotherapy, and with A Course in Miracles or shamanism. Can you talk about how your mind stays open enough? We're going to talk about being open-hearted, but let's start with like open-minded to be able to, like we had a gentleman, he was going through our training, and then he stopped for a while. And then he ended up, it's kind of rare this happens, but he asked for a refund. And, it's like, no problem. But the reason he gave was that he found Jesus. And I said, how are you not doing this training because you found Jesus? I'm like, I don't have any conflict with Jesus. Our training doesn't seem to have a conflict with Jesus. So can you talk like, how has your mind been able to integrate, to synthesize traditions that don't appear to be the same on the surface?
It's really being open-minded. So when my mother died when I was 13, and that at that point began a whole family of us beginning to look at the whys and wherefores. And I think sometimes when trauma happens to us when we are younger, we do begin to look around a little bit more, realizing for me, in a way that death was on my shoulder and is wherever I go, whatever I do. And so being totally grounded within the religious institution was where I started from. And my mother had some special psychic gifts that also impacted my understanding of spirituality. And then beginning to move into my 20s and 30s and looking at, well, what is life? What am I, and how do I fit in within these structures that society has built around me? And I moved all the way through a lot of different paths within the United Methodist Church, through administrative boards and committees and things. And then to have moved into the shamanism, which seemed to really add another element of spirituality for me, without telling me that I could not continue to believe in whatever Christ or avatar or understanding. I'm very much attuned to the divine. And so for me, it's being aware that there is so much more than what I can experience. And it's what I end up calling that divinity, whether it's God or whether it's the Christ consciousness, or there are thousands and thousands of names that are used, as you know, to refer to that infinite oneness. And so an ever evolving sense of openness and open, whether it's open-minded or open-hearted, really becomes at the core, I think, of who we are. And then with the Course in Miracles being really the teachings of Jesus, it just seems to me it seems to me to be more seamless than broken apart.
Yeah, I'm hearing a yes and mindset, a very healthy open-mindedness. Okay, there is the divine, whatever we call that, and yes, and Christ acknowledged that clearly, and of course the miracles, and shamanism, and hypnotherapy, at least the way we approach hypnotherapy. So it's just, it sounds like you're honoring there's one truth, and we all approach it from different ways. And it sounds like you've just taken, at least I could say what I've done, and it sounds like what you've done, like the best of all traditions, right? If you find something really valuable in shamanism, it becomes part of who you are, right? So open-minded is a big part of the best practices. Let's talk about open heart. Right. So what does that mean to you, especially in relationship to a spiritual practice or even doing hypnotherapy or shamanism? Like if you're facilitating someone's process, why is the open heart so important?
It's important really because I want to make sure I go to meet with someone without my own baggage up front. Whether it's being able to make sure I take off any rose-tinted glasses, so that I am really sitting with that person in a way that invites them to be with me. I don't know how many times I have had people come into my hypnotherapy office. They'll sit down in the chair that they choose to sit in, and very frequently they'll break into tears because all we're doing is holding that sacred space of building, as you know, building rapport. But it's simply being present with someone else in a way that allows one person to listen and one person to be heard. And that is so much of what open-heartedness is, I think, just really being present to the moment and present to whatever that person needs to experience that is up for them that day.
And so it sounds like being open-hearted starts with you as a practitioner. Right. I was kind of expecting, which I loved your answer. I was expecting you to say something like, well, they need to open their heart so that, however, if you don't have an open heart, then yeah, you're not necessarily teaching what you want to be teaching, which is be open. So you're starting with you, and that helps others to open up. I have this lingering question about shamanism. I have a lot of our students who are getting into it. You hear about it all the time. I'm going down to Peru, or I was in Costa Rica and I'm doing ayahuasca. I think people think shamanism is all about plant medicine. I wonder what your thoughts are about that.
There are people that think that that is all it is. They equate shamanism with ayahuasca or some of the other medicines. I think in my experience, it is a tool that can be used, much as, you know, I don't want to create any specific comparisons, but every religious understanding has its tools. And although I do not call shamanism a religion, I do say it has its tools. And I have stones that I use. Those are tools. I have a mesa. I have feathers and rattles and things. Do I believe that you have to experience ayahuasca? No, I do not. Have I found it to be beneficial for myself? I have. Do I recommend it for others? Not everyone. I don't think everyone needs the experience. There are a lot of people that want to go down there just for the high of the experience and to be able to say they did it in Peru.
Yes, sure.
But I'd really much rather always say I've done it in sacred space and done it with the right intent.
Absolutely. So my experience of it and from others, and I did try ayahuasca once, and it was done in sacred space. It was part of ceremony, and I really appreciated that. I've done a lot of inner work myself. So a lot of the work is clearing blockages. And they called it in the ceremony I was at getting well, where people are vomiting, right? And like for me, it was just pure bliss and pure joy. Yet I was watching almost everybody else on the ground in catharsis, crying, throwing up, and the shamans are coming around and facilitating process. And I realized, I'm curious your thoughts about this. we do breath work in our school. It's about opening the heart, bringing up what's stored in the subconscious and clearing those blockages, right? The negative beliefs, negative emotions that we all hold inside. And ayahuasca seem like a way, or other plant medicines, perhaps a way to help to detox that, to purge it, to bring it up faster. Of course, we do that in hypnotherapy. And then you talk about like rattles or other tools. I have a colleague who's a psychiatrist who did some shamanic training, and he's working with his patients with rattles. I don't know if that relates to the thing I really want you to talk about, is the heart and clearing the blocks. But ayahuasca appears to be a tool that can help to bring stuff to consciousness that maybe you couldn't do otherwise, similar to what we do with hypnotic regression or breath work. Any thoughts on that?
I absolutely agree. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Ayahuasca, I don't know if you've been reading any of the studies recently, but there are a lot of studies about how it is very helpful for those experiencing PTSD and trauma. And a lot of our war veterans are coming back and discovering that this is something that actually can help in the healing process. It is or can be a very cathartic experience for people. And in our culture, I think you might agree that we tend to tamp down on who we are. So we are not fully expressing ourselves in the world. We want to fit in. We want to be liked. We want to, we want to be admired, whatever it could be. And when we do that, we disown our inner core, our inner selves. And I think that's part of just what we are. What I mean, I guess, by open-heartedness is to continue to be living from that bright light we have within us, allow that to shine out, so that I do often consider myself a lamp lighter, where I'm out holding a light. And if others need to come light their lamp from mine, or if I can hold my light high enough to help them see through the shadows they are walking through, then that's an analogy I think still is pretty well. Then for people to begin to light their own lamps as well.
Beautiful. This is the Illuminated Mind podcast. So I love what you're saying there. You had talked about, when we're preparing for this, myths that people have that keep them struggling. I wonder if you'd like to elaborate on what is it that keeps people from tapping into this light?
Oh, people get stuck, I believe, on a myth that says I'm doing this all by myself. And we people get afraid that we're doing it by ourselves. And that's one of the things I love about hypnotherapy, is you can really break down and talk about emotions and feelings, and people really understand what you're talking about and how you're moving into that. Feeling alone is not a negative thing. It's not a positive. It's just a feeling. And but there are a lot of people that think that, I'm in this alone, and so I'm either gonna hunker down and fight my way through, which of course has all of its own ramifications. Or, you can choose to wear wings and fly over something or fly through something. And so another one is that people often have a myth that I'm not enough. I just can't do this. I'm not enough, and I'm going to either give up, or I just, so I think too that working through that and being able to look at, well, what does it mean when you say I'm not enough? How do you hold that? What's the physicalness in your body? How do you breathe through that? What is it? Where does it sit in your head? How do you talk about it? What do you talk to yourself about?
Yeah. So I hear in those two things, one, I'm alone. One, I'm not good enough. Those are core beliefs, right? So the myths, or the problem, excuse me, the problem that keeps us struggling, at least from the responses for there, is our mind. Right? That's why I got into hypnotherapy after all what's the one common denominator? Like when I studied everything possible. Okay, but what's the one thing that causes suffering? It was just always kept going back to the mind. But I'd love to go a little bit deeper into what you just said, like feeling like we're alone and we're not good enough. I think of that in relationship to a mission or purpose. I believe we all come down to earth with a mission and a purpose. And yet if we say, oh, I'm not good enough, well, not good enough for what? Well, the only thing that really matters if you're here with a mission is your mission. and if you believe you're not good enough to do it, or if you feel like I'm alone in my mission. So my experience is mission or dharma is interconnected, like we're all in it together. Then you must be good enough to be able to do your mission if it was God-given, right? Like if you're not the one who even decided what your mission is, if you just open up to, well, who am I? So I wanted to do these ideas when you say like, I'm not enough, does that relate to the idea of like a person's purpose or their mission, or where do you find that coming up?
I believe it does as well. Yes, it relates to their purpose because they begin to doubt, or they have perhaps been raised in a way that they doubt and do not believe that they are enough. And so you're right, with hypnotherapy, we can go back to those early regression ages, or we can regress back to those early ages when we are children and we make these decisions that may or may not be adequate to who we are today. And I think that's pretty powerful work.
Oh, for sure. If like imagine Jesus. What if he came down here and said, like, I'm all alone, nobody loves me, and I'm not good enough to do this mission? That's not what happened.
Which is not to say he didn't have moments of aloneness and times when he would question God. But that's part of the process, I think, for each one of us. And sometimes we just get so stuck or so afraid that we don't move forward.
Yeah, and sometimes facilitation, right, is really important. If somebody's in that place where they're really struggling, to know, like you said, you're not alone. There are hypnotherapists out there like you with other techniques like shamanism or Course in Miracles level thinking that can help people to transform what's going on inside of them. I wonder if you could talk to us about one of your best cases, a client session that comes to mind, or a set of sessions that yielded great results, or something to help us to understand what has it been like for you to really help someone through specifically.
What comes to mind is a young man I was working with who came in, and even physically his eyes were rather squinted, just from stress, like he was having a hard time looking out and seeing things. And he seemed kind of hunkered down and kind of quiet within himself. And so he wanted to go back and explore some things that had happened to him at some early ages. So we began with the training that you've given me in our hypnotherapy institute. And so we did the beginning meditation so that he could learn my voice and begin to trust my voice. We did some eye movement therapy. We did some regression. We took him back to this young age when he remembered, probably on our third visit, when he remembered a grandmother who had done some things to him that he did not want to remember. And it was things that would be considered probably dark magic. And he would explain those to me. And all I do is listen. I am the one that just pays and honors attention to what people bring up. We don't know whether people fabricate their memories. We don't know what happens, but they're real for those people. And for him, by the end of our third session, we did some shamanic work, but at the end of our third session, his eyes were wide open. He was sitting up straight. He was walking in. He was so much more positive about who he is and what he's doing. I think that's probably one of the top ones right now. And he and I still stay in touch.
That's beautiful. It's measurable, right? Like you can look at his eyes when he walks in and say, he's not as closed down. He's not as withdrawn. He's not as introverted. He's not. Yeah. So what is that like for you? What does that feel like for you? Like the end of the day to know that you're doing that kind of work with someone?
Oh, wow. For me, it's that warm, fuzzy kind of, it's an aha that you want to just say yes to the universe. And thank you, thank you, thank you.
Does it give you more of a feeling than what it was like to be a paralegal?
Absolutely.
I at the full-time, when I was in full-time practice before I opened the school, I was seeing about 25 people per week. So it's like 5 a day. And sometimes I'll be like 10-hour days, 2 hours for each session. There were times where I was there doing 6 or 7 a day, but even with all the exhaustion and doing that, I would be on my knees at the end of the day, sometimes just like thank you. I can't, this is my profession. Like some people have to go to work and they work to make someone else rich and they get a paycheck, but I get to transform people's lives every single day. So it's just wonderful to hear you talk about what is it like, yeah, from your own experience. And that's my favorite thing in the world, to hear graduates talking about, yeah, I have this career and I'm integrating my spirituality. I can bring my shamanism into it. I can bring Christianity. I can bring Course in Miracles. Maybe you leave stuff out when it's not appropriate for a client, but you get to be fully yourself. That's what I hear you say. Like, I just have to be spiritually aware with an open heart and open mind with a powerful set of techniques, and I can transform people's lives.
Absolutely. And when you begin to transform other people's lives, you really realize that you can transform the world. Yeah. And that's really, for me, I realize and have really realized with the shamanic practice as well as my hypnotherapy training is that I am here as a peacemaker, and I am here to contribute to the peace of the world. And so in whatever way that is possible, that is part of what I do.
Yeah, and that's mission, right? That's purpose. If anybody's listening and they're wondering, like, what do I do with my life? I was on a podcast yesterday, I was being interviewed, and I had said something like, who are you going to be when you grow up? And I meant that in the context of who are you going to be when you spiritually grow up? Like at some point, you're not as focused on your own personal growth. You're not having to read all the books. You're not trying to find the new techniques. Maybe you've become accomplished in finding something inside of yourself, like the joy, the love, the peace, the presence of the divine. And then eventually all you want to do is just give it away and give it away. So one of the things you give away, I'm curious to learn more about now, is the idea of a power animal, or I don't know, do you call it like a totem animal? But I wonder if you could explain that, and then I know you're going to take us in a little 5-minute meditation to help us tap into that. Before we go into meditation, I don't use this in my practice. So tell us about the value of working with a power animal and how someone might integrate that into their either a private practice or just like into my own personal life. How would I integrate that?
I use it with clients when they might have something that is presenting as a stuckness, or where a point where they might need some assistance. And it's not necessarily always the same animal. So animals change. And in the South American tradition, we have specific archetypical animals, but I don't want to limit anyone to what those are. So I will simply take people on a guided imagery meditation to find out what kind of animal might appear to them today, right now, to lend its energies to them for a short time, where they might learn from what those energies are. So we can assign that in hypnotherapy. We can, of course, talk about, oh, well, what part would that be? But in a different way, with the shamanic, people are sometimes very open to having animals come visit them. And then they get to where they can learn, what does the animal mean to you and me? And how can I research more about this animal? And what are the energetics that it brings? So usually those energetics will surprise us and somehow or other help people through that point of questioning that they have, or that point of where they're stuck with some issue that's come up.
Nice. It makes it sound less, quote, woo-woo when you talk about it in the context of like parts therapy. So like I'm a paraglider. I love, as you know, I love being in the air. And when you brought up this idea, I brought up this idea and we're talking about it, I thought, oh, like I would visualize a falcon. So instead of thinking of it as like some, I don't know, something that's more out there, it's just like, no, what are the values? What are the virtues of this animal? Like, what would this animal, if it was parts therapy, if I said, all right, I'm scared to do this, what would this animal say to me? That's where I hear it being like really valuable in working with the psyche, to say, okay, you have an inner child, you have an inner parent, maybe you have your higher self, but you also have a power animal. And what would this part of you say to you? So it's just like letting a part of your own psyche embody some of the qualities of that animal, and then being able to utilize the wisdom or the perspective of that animal.
Yes, that's it.
Nice. All right, nice. Would you like to take us on a meditation now? I'm curious.
Absolutely. If you are interested, yes. We'll take about 5 minutes or so, and we'll just kind of go where we need to. So if anyone is listening, I do want to make sure that no one is driving
Mhm.
do this. But I do suggest that you close your eyes to begin this. And it's a very simple process where you imagine as if there is a door in front of you and you open the door and step out into a meadow. And this meadow is just the perfect time of day for you. For me, it might be right now, which is noontime. It's a grassy meadow. There might be a stream running down the side, and you can see off in the distance where there might be forests. And beyond the trees, you might see mountains. There might be clouds, but the temperature is perfect. And in the center of the meadow, you see a tree. And you begin moving toward that tree, whether you are walking or looking at your feet to recognize your feet, or whether there's a trail, or you just somehow move toward that tree. And when you get to the tree, you can stand in its shade for a moment, but you say to the tree, I am here to find a purpose for whatever's up in your life. I am here for assistance in, and you fill in the blank, whatever is needed right now. I am here for additional guidance today. And then you can turn away from the tree, remaining in the shade perhaps, and looking out across the meadow. And in this wonderful temperate atmosphere, you might see something begin to move along the edge of the meadow, and it's very peaceful moving and very invited moving. And you watch as whatever it is comes closer to you, knowing that you are totally safe and happy and secure in what comes, that this comes at your invitation. And as it begins to get closer, you can begin to see what this animal energy is that comes to you. You begin to give it animal characteristics, and it comes close to you. And you notice it, and you can talk with it, and you can hear it respond. And you might just ask it its name. You might ask it if it would be willing to be with you for a few weeks to help you gain clarity on this issue or this topic. You might walk with it for a few steps. And when you're ready, just ask with thanks if it would be willing to perhaps be shared, and you can put it in your pocket, your imaginary pocket in this place. And providing, of course, that the energy has said yes, then you do pocket a little bit of it and you say, thank you, thank you, thank you. And you move back toward the doorway that you used to move into this meadow, taking with you that little piece of that spirit animal or energy that came to you. You open the door again and you step back to this place where you are right now. And then you can open your eyes. And that was, Matthew, that was really very, very short. I would probably take a little longer with people, but you can still, even in those few moments, find this energetic something that has come to you. So what did you experience?
Yeah, for me personally, it was fun because I've done this type of work before. Like I like birds, I like falcons. I live up in the Adirondacks, so there's always deer in my property. But I decided, oh, let me just see what comes in. And a cow came in. I'm like, all right, that sounds fun. Like, you know what? Why not? Hindus honor them as sacred, so why not? I was like, what is your name? It's like Betsy. I'm like, all right, this is getting kind of silly. But so while there was a silly component to it, at the same time, I was like, all right, well, if I were to ask this animal, we're growing the school, and there's always I always push my boundaries for the next big challenge. And so if I asked the cow, like, what is your point of view on this next big challenge? And actually, like in Zen, one of the koans, one of the riddles that they use, like, what is the sound of one hand clapping, one of the similar koans is, what is moo? And I was like, oh, the cow would just say moo. But moo in Zen practice, even though you're not really meant to translate it, because you're meant to contemplate, well, what is moo? It means like nothingness or emptiness, or the reality of what is when your mind is just empty and clear. So I just see cows as simple, and like there's a lot of cows up here in this farm country that I'm in, and they're beautiful and just simple and quiet. So for me, it was like the innocence, the gentleness that I was able to tap into. Aside from like, what is this cow? This is the most majestic creature, and his name is Betsy. But yeah, it was like I could appreciate tapping into, well, what is like the essence of this creature, and how would this creature, if you want to call it a creature, how would this being approach my situation? And a cow would just be like, I'm good. Right? I'm simple, I'm clear. So anyway, that's what came to me.
I think it's wonderful. And you've already jumped into taking a look at different perspectives of what is cow, besides the humor, besides the Betsy, which could even, as Betsy, pull up some fun early childhood, associations with cow. But absolutely, cows they're all over Texas too. And they are very quiet. They're also, they like to be in groups. So there are lots of things you can begin to really reflect on cows. And specifically for you, how would you use that cow-related energy to move forward with the school? And what's fun about the energies is that they just stay with us for a couple of days, couple of hours, a couple of weeks sometimes, and you might see more pictures or more cows around all of a sudden. And you're going, what do I need to be reminded of cow right now? Oh, I just need to move. Or I just need
Right.
to, be quiet.
Yeah, it relates. I would approach this the way you might approach tarot readings, or when you're looking at oracle decks. Like, well, what is, okay, you pulled the card, the cow card. Okay, well,
Yeah.
instead of thinking of that as like, you're trying to predict the future, or there's some mystical cow. It's like, no, it's like, what does this mean? It's like a Rorschach test, right? It's like,
Yeah,
what does
sure.
the cow mean to me? I like that we put him in, like he's here in my little my pocket, right? So what would if I had to pull him out and ask them a question about something, it seems like it adds a new mental resource that someone might not have tapped into otherwise. Like I could ask my inner child, what do you want to do? But maybe he's scared. I could ask my inner parent, what are they going to do? But maybe that part is being overly shoulding, too responsible to, no, you must do it this way, right? And I could ask higher self. I could ask my adult self, my intellect, but now I have another data point, right? What is my inner Betsy? What is my inner cow say about this? And
Absolutely. And
yeah.
you can understand the cow language because it's sitting right there. And if you needed to, you can actually take it out of your pocket and you can put it into a chakra if you wanted to. That's another element that you can do. But it's just wonderful just to allow it to deepen. And when you're done with it, it's just an energy that's gone. You don't need it anymore.
Right. That's nice. Yeah. You don't have to make it a major part of your psyche. You don't have to say, in a past life, I was a cow. It's just like,
you don't have to go, what do I feed you now?
right. You don't have to hold on to it and make it a whole. I mean, people do that with past life regression, right? They'll go back to a past life. They have some story come out. Might not be real history, but they like the story for some reason. It came out of them, so they resonate with it. But then it becomes a whole identity where that might not be beneficial because, yeah, I don't want to say that, well, I am a cow, or I used to be a cow, or I'm going to become a cow. It's like, no, I had a dialogue with a part of me, like, you helped me to create a part of me. There's like cow consciousness. And what would that part say? But not to hold on to it and make it like my sole identity. So I like that you said, and afterwards you could just let it go.
Right. And it's specifically all we're doing is we're tapping into the energies of what happens to be represented right now for you as cow.
Yes. Right. Because in the future, that cow might say something very different, or I might say something very different.
Or you might never see a cow again.
In my awareness, probably where I live, probably not, but sure. Nice. It's been such a pleasure, Beth. It always has been. You're also an author, so I wonder if you just want to plug a book or talk about what your current projects are.
Thank you. I would love to. I have written Echoes from the Stars, which is on Amazon, and I have also a book of poetry out called Finding Direction, which you can also find on Amazon.
Mhm.
I have a current manuscript out right now. I am hunting for the right publishing house. And so, Matthew, I may be back in touch with you
Mhm.
in that regard. And that's really about finding harmony and wholeness. And I'm doing a workshop on that as well for those who are searching for inner peace and want to have some different tools to be able to find that. In
Beautiful.
today's stressful world, it seems like the timing is good. So thank you.
It's crucial, right? Yeah, thank God people like you who are bringing people to the light, and you're living your dream, right? You're writing books because it's inside of you, writing your poetry because it's inside of you. I have a dear friend who's a poet. We probably talked about her way back when I met you, and she struggled so much just wanting to make like poetry the career. And it's like, well, don't quit your day job, but at least keep that up. But with you, yeah, you can do hypnotherapy, you can do shamanism, you can be an author. So how would people get in touch with you if they wanted a private session or to learn more about your works, your workshops?
Great. They can contact me at beth@thecalmingcenter.com. That's just the way it sounds, THECALMING center, CENTER.com. They can email me, look me up on my website, The Calming Center. They can find me on Twitter at essentially B1. I'm on Facebook, and I'm around. So yes, thank you for that
Yeah, of course.
reminder.
I love the dual meaning of that, thecalmingcenter.com. That's how we can find you. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. You seem to always pop up in my life over the years. Like never one of those students who's never truly away. You went through the Anahat meditation system, at least some of that as I was teaching that live. And yeah, I announced this podcast and there you were again. So it's always such a pleasure. So thank you so much for spending this time with me. I hope some people who might feel inspired can reach out to you, learn more about shamanism, power animals, and all the other beautiful work you're doing. So thanks so much for joining me here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Take care.
Yes, thanks, Beth.